what that theme music means, don't you, Amy?
He's back. Congressman Aaron Schock. Disgraced former congressman.
Yeah, Downton Aaron, the Earl of Peoria, finally indicted. I mean, I really don't understand what took the Central District, U.S. Attorney's Office of the Central District down there in Springfield so long. This is, it doesn't strike me as particularly complicated. All you have to do is go through the financial records, personal and campaign. 24-count indictment handed up Thursday in Springfield. Details what we already knew to be true, that Aaron Schock improperly used campaign funds to support his lavish, jet-setting, Instagram-obsessed lifestyle. We talked about this at the time of his resignation. The Downton Abbey music, if you've forgotten, is because he used funds to
$40,000.
to redecorate his congressional office in Downton Abbey style.
Yeah, and he's just blamed it. You know, haters are going to hate.
Well, I'm different. I came to Congress at 27. When I take a personal vacation, I don't go sit on the beach. I go do active things. And so I'm also not going to live in a cave. And so when I post an Instagram photo of me with my friends, as Taylor Swift said, haters are going to hate.
Oh, I love when Congressman quote Taylor Swift.
Yes, and now we have bad blood, Aaron Schock.
Oh, we do,
How
because
about that? Taylor Swift right back at you, sister.
Aaron Schock responded in Springfield yesterday to these 24 grand jury indictments.
After the government realized there was no crime, they chose to spend the next 19 months using 2 grand juries and millions of taxpayer dollars in an attempt to manufacture a crime.
Oh, yeah, that's right. This is all manufactured.
So the indictment accuses him, among other things, about lying about miles he drove his car for official house business, fraudulently obtaining nearly 140 grand in mileage reimbursement. If I recall correctly, this Tahoe, which traded hands a couple of times in terms of sale and resale, that was curious. In addition, I think he reimbursed himself for more miles than
and they were driven on the car.
Yeah.
And then the car ended up in his dad's driveway. Remember when ABC7 showed up? They're like, oh, and here's that Tahoe. And he said, yeah, I've been driving it, Aaron Schock's father.
How about this example? Former staffer in 2013 was accused by Schock of improperly accessing a friend's social media account. Schock, according to the indictment, claimed Capitol Police and the FBI launched a criminal investigation. That prompted the former staffer to hire a lawyer and rack up 10 grand in legal bills, which were paid by the staffer's father. The indictment says Schock later admitted he lied about a criminal investigation and, when confronted, reimbursed the father of the staffer $7,500. So that's bizarre.
That's bizarre, too.
And then he compounds it by going to his campaign fund and reimbursing himself the $7,500 that he reimbursed the father of the staffer he lied about being under criminal investigation.
Well, Chuck Gotti reported yesterday he could go to jail for 78 years.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's...
This is Jesse Jackson Jr. on steroids in terms of misuse of campaign funds. He's a Republican, young shining star, blah, 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 whatever. He's another ruling class politician who believed his own pap and is now going to the clink, and he deserves to be. But for more on this and the legal nature of it, we're pleased to be joined by Jeff Cramer. Jeff is a former federal prosecutor. He's now the managing director of investigations for Berkeley Research Group in Chicago. But from 2000 to 2009, Jeff was an assistant U.S. attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Northern District of Illinois. That's Chicago.
And that all fits on his business card.
So he knows of what he speaks when it comes to prosecutions of political corruption. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Certainly. Good morning.
So let's start with the point that Schock makes that I actually agree, and it's the only one, that this took 19 months. Doesn't this seem unduly long to wrap up what we see contained in this indictment?
In some respects, it might, because you look at the indictment, and as you indicated, some of these are pretty straightforward, and you wonder why it took 19 months. By the same token, it doesn't really matter. Maybe it took 19 months because they were looking at other allegations, maybe that didn't pan out. I mean, we don't know. And the reality is, it really doesn't matter. If you're indicted after a grand jury sits for 2 months, 19 months, or 30 months, you're still indicted. So for him, it really doesn't matter.
So Schock and his lawyer suggested that the prosecution is politically motivated. I mean, Schock said that he made honest mistakes and that no, and he didn't intend to break the law. And he also alluded to the email scandal that enveloped Hillary Clinton during her presidential campaign.
Yeah, again, that is something that he can put forth at trial. The political angle usually doesn't work with juries here in Illinois. We've seen defendants
because we've been here before.
Yeah, we've seen defendants of both parties say that there's a witch hunt, and at the end of the day, the prosecutor is going to put their cases in. As you indicated, some of these allegations are pretty straightforward, and the numbers kind of prove themselves. And any talk of what's been going on with Secretary Clinton's email, again, mildly interesting, I suppose, but not relevant to this defendant nor his day in court.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we've forgotten, though, because it seems like it's been at least a few weeks since an Illinois politician had been indicted by the federal government. So, so we have short memories here. One of the things, too, and this goes back to Blagojevich, right? The idea that some people scoffed at the sentence that Blagojevich received and thought it was a bit punitive because he followed George Ryan. Do you suspect that there's the possibility, 78 years notwithstanding, but the possibility that where Jesse Jackson Jr. went away for a couple of years or got a couple of years, maybe just under 3 years, that Aaron Schock is looking at a stiffer sentence in part because what has come before him and juries and judges saying, what does it take to send a message to you people to stop doing the same things that people who already went to federal prison have done?
I don't think so. The federal guidelines are driven, certainly in this case, by the loss amount. And if you look at it, we're not talking a lot of money. It's some of these the allegations are pretty bold and brazen, even by Illinois standards. But it's not a lot of money. It was a lot of work, a lot of machinations to go through this. Mm-hmm. But he didn't net $1 million or $2 million, and that's what drives it. There could be some enhancement like abuse of trust and abuse of power, et cetera. But at the end of the day, this is not something that's going to send him away for years and years. If you look at the Jesse Jackson Jr. allegations, those dollar amounts were larger than what you see here.
Now, he's scheduled to make his first court appearance November 21st. How quickly does this proceed to trial? And when do you think we're looking at, if there's no plea bargain, this going to trial and being adjudicated?
Well, 90-95% of federal indictments end up in a plea arrangement. So you have to say the odds are this is not going to see trial, and there'll be some sort of agreement. Obviously, he's never been convicted before, and that bodes in his favor. These are the kind of things that don't really have to stretch out for years and years. It's very straightforward. There'll be defense motions to get discovery and maybe suppress some of the evidence. But at the end of the day, I think this will be resolved certainly in 6 to 8 months at the outside.
Do you think they'll indict anybody on his staff as well?
It depends. The federal government certainly has a couple arrows in its quiver with lying to the FBI, and you see that tacked on to several indictments or just standalone. So if any of his staff try to cover for him in lying to the FBI, the government may use that as leverage to get them to cooperate. But I don't know if you'll see anyone else indicted for this.
I hear through political circles over the course of the duration of this investigation. First, for a while, Schock thought he was going to be indicted, and then more recently, didn't think he was going to be indicted. He was allegedly out in California, living at a friend's house, selling real estate, hanging out on the beach, combing it or whatnot. And so the question is, kind of, are there political calculations in terms of timing, or does an investigation like this, is there the possibility, particularly on the heels of everything that's happened with Hillary Clinton, the possibility that you're moving in one direction and it looks like we're going to have an indictment or we're not going to have an indictment, and then you do a 180 and it looks like we are? Or was it just a matter, in your experience, of going through everything that there was to go through to offer as comprehensive a conclusion as possible?
I think it's the latter. These things are pretty linear. They follow the evidence and wherever the evidence goes. Sometimes if you're looking at an operative date, like an election date or something, that may be, a light, if you will, that you want to resolve it before that. But, certainly that wasn't the case here because he's out of office. So since he's out of office, you don't have any arbitrary deadlines other than the statute of limitations, which is years and years. So you could just, take your time, if you will, 19 months, and just follow the evidence. and make sure, and federal prosecutors are good at this because they've got the resources of the federal government and some extremely good FBI agents who work corruption cases here in Illinois. And when an indictment lands by the federal government in Illinois on a public corruption case, history has shown the defendant usually gets convicted.
Do you think that this, though, was there any calculus related to the change in regime that these are Obama administration appointees and now you're going to a Republican administration? Do you think that factored in at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, this is remove the Republican and Democrat labels for a second. This is just straightforward Illinois graft. There's nothing special about this guy.
I agree
with the exception of, and I'm amazed as I read the allegations, he was working pretty hard to get not a lot of money. You know, the back and forth with the car and the various reimbursements. I don't want to say it's petty Annie stuff, but you'd hope he worked just as hard being a congressman because he didn't net a lot of money, and he seemed to be going through a lot of work to get a new car.
Yeah, I mean, most politicians just aren't
and
good
go to Bears games, and he took a private plane once just to get a haircut.
Yeah, I mean, most politicians, they're
frivolous spending. Don't you think?
They're just not good at anything, including being a criminal.
It's very juvenile. You know, unlike the Blagojevich or the Resco cases or some of the other more sophisticated public corruption matters where they're looking for large dollar amounts. Maybe that's the bar has moved here in Illinois. But you look at this and it seems sophomoric in its execution, and it would be amusing if he wasn't a sitting U.S. congressman at the time. But Illinois were almost immune to this stuff. So, and I think prosecutors are as well. In that district, they do good work. The evidence is what it is. They put it forth. The grand jury indicted. I think you're going to see a plea agreement here.
All right. And, one thing you always have to remember, though, in Illinois politics, souls sell very cheaply. 30 pieces of silver will do, or one private jet ride to a Bears game, apparently. Mm-hmm. All right. He is Jeff Cramer, former federal prosecutor, now managing director of investigations for Berkeley Research Group in Chicago, was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District from 2000 to 2009. Jeff, thank you for your insights. Appreciate it.
Certainly.
And he joined us on our turnkey, Look at Me, Pro answer line.